Hello, and the review of the day is one that I can't wave around at the screen, which is a bit confusing. I'm used to being able to wave the book at the screen, but this was an audiobook, and it was an audiobook from the library, what's more. Barehead by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I enjoyed it immensely. I have heard, I'm pretty sure I got this as an audiobook as well, Dogs of War by the same author a couple of years ago. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was like nothing quite in my experience. So when I saw that Barehead was available on one of my library apps, I was pretty keen. The version I listened to, I'm not sure, I think it might have been Audible, but I'm not 100% sure about that. It was narrated by Lawrence Bouvard, Nathan Osgood, and William Hope. I gather that all of those are males, which is funny because one of the voices definitely seemed female. So I don't know how that squares out. Narration with multiple voices doesn't always work for me. I like audiobooks to be read as books. Like I was reading a book to someone was reading a book to me. I don't like the audiobooks that try to turn it into a radio play, because usually they can't, and I especially don't like ones that combine music with their narration, because it's just confusing and gets annoying. Barehead narration was excellent. There were weird aspects to it though. So we've got Honey, who's a female character, though she's inside a male guy's head. And you'd go, at times, it was fine going from one narrator to another, but when you end one chapter with Honey and then you start another chapter with Honey and they're both Honey talking, but they're both different narrators, that was a little bit odd, I've got to say. So, Barehead starts off on Mars, and we're inside the head of Jimmy. I've forgotten his surname, doesn't matter. Jimmy is very much the lower end of the working Joe. Mars is being terraformed, but it's being done slowly. So a huge corporation hired a huge number of people. Mostly they had good reason to escape Earth, or they had nothing on Earth. They got heavily modified. They got modified so much that they probably don't even really look human anymore. They don't have human skin tones. They're shades of grey. They've got any number of different eyelids that nicate like a reptile to keep out the dust. They've been modified so that they can actually breathe the thin air of Mars for short amounts of time. And they're building this huge fancy city for some people who are going to come afterwards. Certainly not the people who are actually building it. They're just working schlocks. Jimmy himself is, in addition to that, an addict. He's addicted to Stringer, some sort of drug that we don't go into too much. It makes him feel wonderful and powerful and in control, but generally he's not. He's a mess. And everyone knows he's a mess except for him. He thinks he's holding it together. And that's all happening on Mars. Back on Earth, we've got a character who existed in Dogs of War, but which I didn't remember too well. Much as I love Dogs of War, I read it a couple of years ago, and the memory of a thoroughly enjoyable book is there, but the details are missing. And I didn't read my review before going on to Barehead. I had read that Barehead was a perfectly good standalone, and I was going to let it do that. Honey is one of the bioengineered animals that were developed to be dogs of war, genetically engineered bioforms. So Honey's predominantly bear. I'm not sure if she's got a little bit of anything else, but most of the others in Dogs of War did. And she was part of the end result of Dogs of War. I don't want to say too much about it. It's a marvelous book. If you haven't read it, go read it right now and find out for yourself how that works out. But when the bioforms finally get some acceptance at the end of it, Honey goes on to become an academic. She goes to university. She has a whole heap of degrees. She becomes a speaker on the circuit. It's a bit of a pundit. Degrees, postgraduates, literary papers, the whole thing. That's who Honey is. And at the beginning of Bearhead, she's an old bear now. She's no longer the young bear that she was. And the fight for equal rights for bioforms and to subdue the sort of technology that will put a collar on them it looked like it was being won for a few years there, but now it's going back under. So most bioforms are accepted in society only as if they're fitted with the sort of hardware and software in their heads that means that they basically have no autonomy and can only do what humans tell them to. There's also nasty rumours that the same technology is out there but being used on humans. And there is a place called Braintree that is run by a scientist who is probably experimenting on that. He's definitely experimenting. But what the hell? I'm trying to think of a way that I can review this without doing any spoilers, and it's not easy. So aside from Honey on Earth, who is a bear, and Jimmy on Mars, who is a human, one day Jimmy desperately needs more drug and he's run out of credit. And he agrees to, and as an end of all options, he goes to this small-time criminal called Sugar. She runs a operation which concentrates on data, information uploads. And Jimmy's worked for her before. I'm getting very Johnny Mnemonic feelings from this whole setup. But she'll store information in his head, and she knows that he never tries to peek. He doesn't care what's in there anyway. He just wants to share space in his head and get some money for it so he can go away and buy drugs from somewhere else. Sugar doesn't deal in drugs. She only deals in information. This time she comes to the party for him and agrees to offer him quite a bit of money to upload a large amount into his head. And she does. And it takes ages. And then Jimmy starts to go back to his place, having achieved some drugs. And all of a sudden, the package in his head unfolds itself like a gift and starts talking to him. And it's Honey. She's been uploaded into his head. At the same time that this has happened, Jimmy is far from delighted with it. Not a big thinker, our Jimmy. Having someone else in his head is sending him scrambling mad. But Honey is far more intelligent than him, knows far more about bioengineering technology, and she can take over his body if she wants to. She'd rather not, but she has to a couple of times to stop Jimmy from wiping her out. Why exactly we're there, she doesn't know. She doesn't have a full memory set. She's unfolding the bits of memory, and there isn't a complete pattern. She's obviously been sent to Mars for some reason, probably by herself, and that's maybe to make contact with bees. Bees was one of the warrior tribe of bioengineered animals. Not animals, this one's a swarm from Dogs of War. But bees fell out of favour with humanity as me hiding on Mars. So basically what you've got is this really, really elaborate future in which you've got all these different forms of intelligence. You've got the intelligence of bioengineered creatures that may or may not be mostly animal or mostly human. You've got ones that are just plain animals but have got equipment in their head that makes them do what they're told. Then you've got all these other things. There's a literary hive mind of bees, but there's a hive mind of humans that call themselves HumOS. There's a lot of different moving parts. And the world is so exciting that listening to the story in it is great. Now, there's one other big thing on Earth that is an extremely dangerous politician called Thompson. He's, if not sociopathic, then he is completely inimical to human rights and human good human anything. But he's very successful. And we see him through the head of his PA, who's with him all the time and really adores him and is doing the best to help him because he isn't a smart man. He's very good at absorbing goodwill and convincing people that he's told them what they want to hear, where he's actually said nothing. He completely relies on Carol, his PA, to get data, consolidate it down to a package she can feed to him to achieve his means. And Carol starts off being the perfect PA, but slowly it becomes very, very clear there's something really, really creepy happening there, and I'm not telling you what. The narrative with Thompson, maybe I'll do a whole different one, which is Spoiler City. But this one I'm assuming that you may not have read, Barehead. And again, if you haven't, you really should. I think Dogs of War comes well first, but you could do Barehead on its own as a solitary. It's brilliant. So I'm not going to expose what Thompson is and what he's doing, and I'm not going to expose how Carol is helping him with it. But can I just say, rapes, well, what's the thing you do? Warning, alert, alarm, trigger warning. That's it. I knew there was a word for it. Trigger warning. Trigger warning for rape here is big. If you are triggered by rape and violence against women, this is not a good one for you. I mean, I'm not sure that Adrian Tchaikovsky is ever going to be good for you if you're triggered by violence in general, but the rape in this one was really quite nauseating. And yes, Thompson. So the whole narrative of this politician and what he's doing and how he's doing it, and maybe even what he is, that is just fascinating. I've never read anything quite like this in another book, and I've certainly never read one that was so vividly done. It was fascinating. But yeah, we do end up with a very unexpected end, an unexpected end for Honey, an unexpected end for Bees, an unexpected end for Jimmy Martin. I've just remembered his surname. There ends up being a complete fight for dominance in Mars, where all those people who've been sent there to work have got massive amount of storage in their brain that it soon becomes clear has a malign side effect. Yeah, don't know what else to say that wouldn't be pure spoiler. Don't want to spoiler it. Brilliant book. I loved cyberpunk when it first came out, and for me, early cyberpunk was William Gibson and Michael Schwaber. Vacuum Flowers. He wrote Vacuum Flowers and Stations of the Tide. Can't pronounce his second name. This to me feels like an excellent step up from cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was very much mixing the cybernetic with the meat on the street. That's the punk. This is kind of the grandchild of cyberpunk. You've still got all the wetware, you've still got all the hardware, you've still got humans being developed to be something other than humans, and now you've got animals being developed to be something other than animals, and a whole heap of in-betweens. You've got multiple types of intelligence, and questioning what is intelligence and what would humanity really react to the moment when there's multiple types of intelligence. Brilliant, brilliant book. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly recommend it. I might actually go out and buy real paper type copies of both Dogs of War and Barehead, because I think I'd like to reread them with my own voice, supplying the voices in my head. Excellent characterization. I've got actually nothing to complain about with this book, which is rare for me. 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads ratings. Adrian Tchaikovsky, I clearly need to read more of his. I've got no idea what. These are the only 2 books of his I've ever read. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.